paragraphs. So it's a lot for me to handle, all this doing and busyness. Given the choice, I would rather be a preacher than Mary or Elizabeth. I'd rather think about all this and then tell you what I'm thinking, which is what preaching turns out to be most of the time. I'd rather stand here and define for you what Christmas is, just exactly what it means, than to get up and start doing all these things that Mary and Elizabeth are doing, much less all the things they both declare that God is doing. It's all just a little too busy for me. Blessed is she who believes that God will do what God says God will do, Elizabeth proclaims. Mary believes. That's what Elizabeth is talking about. Mary believes by getting up and going. It's a 4 days journey from Nazareth to Ankara, and as far as we know, Mary makes this journey all alone. Young, pregnant girl making such a journey by herself is risky and dangerous. But for Mary, believing means far more than just having conversations with angels and saying yes to one another. It means getting up and going and doing what must be done, no matter how dangerous and no matter how risky and no matter how difficult it might turn out to be. Young Mary, old Elizabeth will both be inconvenienced, to say the very least, because believing is more than saying yes. It's more than saying, well, here's what I think. It's far more. Their lives will never be the same again. They both believe, so far as I can tell, Mary and Elizabeth are believers. And Mary and Elizabeth will keep on believing. They'll keep on doing, carrying and birthing and nursing and changing and rocking and comforting and feeding and teaching. There's a lot to do when you believe. And in Mary's case, we have to acknowledge the fact that God is going to need a mom. God needs a mom. The writer to the Hebrews says, consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offerings you do not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. So in Christ, in this Jesus to be born, God becomes a person with a body who does stuff. And a person with a body who does stuff needs a mom. Somebody tells the story of a young dad with a newborn baby who won't stop crying. And so the young dad has picked up the book. You know, the book is the one that explains everything about babies and tells you why they cry and how to get them to stop crying. It's the book where if you read it, you'll know what's going on. You know that book. He's got that book and he's looking at it, but the baby keeps on crying. Crying and crying and crying. And the young dad's mother-in-law is there, and he's not been listening to her until finally, after what seems like an eternity of crying baby, she takes her young son-in-law by the arm, she looks him in the eye, and she says, put down the book and pick up the baby. That's what this story invites us to do. It invites us to put down the book and pick up the baby. Mary and Elizabeth know the book. They know the law. They know the religious rules. They know what it means to offer sacrifices in temple to atone for sin. But sacrifices and offerings do not desire, but a body prepared for me. And burnt offerings and sin offerings who do not take any pleasure. Then I said, see, God, I've come to do your will, O God. That's what Mary and Elizabeth have come to do, God's will. They do what the writer to the Hebrews least many of us have imagined it that way over the years. She begins rejoicing over what God has done and looking with favor on her lowly status. But then she grabs onto something much larger than herself. She acknowledges that God is showing mercy to everybody. That God is scattering the proud in their own imaginations. That God is bringing the powerful down from their thrones. And God is lifting up the lowly. And God is filling the hungry with good things. And God is sending the rich away empty-handed. And this is what Jesus will do from the very beginning to the very end. Just watch him. Just watch what he does and read the whole story. It's what he does from beginning to end. And so God is Christmasing. God is doing Christmas. God is changing the world. God is taking the likes of young Mary and Joseph and old Elizabeth and Zechariah, and God is turning the world on its head. And that might be hard to believe. It might be very hard to believe in these days when there is a shortage of mercy in this world. And the proud are still running their mouths and concocting their schemes, and the powerful are still grabbing for more power, and the lowly are still struggling to be noticed, and the stomachs of the hungry are still churning for lack of food, and the rich are getting richer, and the politicians are handing us partisan rhetoric and chewable bites, and the people take the chewable bites rather than the complex truth, and nobody seems to know how to find a way together. It's hard to believe this stuff. You've got to have some faith to buy all this. You've got to have some faith to sing. That's why we sing so much in church, by the way, because to sing is to say that you still believe. To sing is to say that you've listened to the news and you've read the reports and you've heard what's going on in Syria and you know what's going on in Burundi and you know what's happening down the street and you know what's going on down across town from you, and you still believe somehow that God is Christmasing. To sing is to say, I still believe that Christ is being born in this world. I still believe that somebody is saying, yes, that somebody could be me. I still believe that somebody dares to risk whatever it takes to set the world on a new path. To sing is to say, I still believe. And if you still believe, if you still do, then put down the book and pick up the baby. What are you going to do for the little precious, sweet baby, Jesus? What mercy has God given you that only you can give to somebody else? What strength do you have that only you can give to serve the lowly? What proud thoughts do you need to get a hold of in your own head? What word do you have that only you can speak to the powerful? Who are the lowly ones who are waiting to be lifted up and noticed? Who are the hungry who have nothing to eat until you feed them? Who are they? Who are the rich who need to learn to share what they have with others? Where are you? Where am I in this busy, 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 busy story? Because the story is getting busier, and it's getting busier, and it's getting busier, and it just has to. It just must. Mary and Elizabeth find each other. They go to one another because they can't bear it all alone. Mary can't bear God all alone. Elizabeth can't bear the prophet John all alone. Neither can speak their word without having somebody to hear it and to listen. Neither can make sense of everything that's going on without the other one. There is no going it alone. Only together. And so they stand together, Mary and Elizabeth, praising God, singing to God, hoping in God, believing in God, and ready to do God's will. just like Jesus will do. Sacrifices, offerings you've not desired, but you've given me a body. In burnt offerings and sin offerings, you've taken no pleasure. Then I said, see, God, I have come to do your will, oh God. And so Jesus comes and he does perfectly what you and I can't seem to do perfectly ourselves. He sanctifies us. He makes us holy. Once and for all of us, for all time, every one of us. He does God's will. Because Christmas is something you do. It's something God gives the world as an utter gift. And it's something we give to the world as a gift. And there is no other way. All this going and all of this leaping and all this talking and all of this singing and all of this finding each other. There's just no other way. No way. And Elizabeth and Mary stand there together, filled with joy. They are filled with joy. Today we've lit the candle of joy, the last candle, the one that says Christmas is almost here. And joy comes, it seems, by believing that God is faithful. By believing against all the evidence to the contrary that God will do exactly what God said God will do. Enough to bear it in our own bodies. Enough to give it birth through our own flesh. Because blessed are we who still believe. Janet Morley writes these words, O God, our deliverer. You cast down the mighty and lift up those of no account. As Elizabeth and Mary embraced with songs of liberation, so may we also be pregnant with your Spirit and affirm one another in hope for the world. Through Jesus Christ. Amen. We're invited today as we turn to a moment of prayer to remember Linda Fallen and Mary Jones, who have been hospitalized recently, as well as Wayne and Ann Weber at the passing of Ann's brother, Paul Skelton, at Doug Kniemeyer and the family at the passing of his mother, Brian Sides and Christine Emanuel and family at the passing of Brian's father, and the family of Silva Walker, who passed away on December 14th. In these silent moments, lift up your hearts to God. If you have a spoken prayer, pray it out just as you are led to do so. And let your heart meet God, who is meeting you here today in this moment. Let us pray.
Come back. Save us from politics. Save us from burial.
God, our hearts are full. Our bodies are filled with hoping and yearning. And God, we dare to ask that you would fill us more with love and joy and peace and hope. The time is growing shorter and shorter. Christ is coming to us, oh God, bringing light and hope where there is despair. Help us, God. Help us to believe. Help us that what we believe with our lips we might believe in our hearts, and that what we believe in our hearts we might practice with our lives. God, we are amazed that you lift up the lowly and bring down the powerful. We are amazed, O God, that you send the rich away empty, but you feed the hungry, that you remember your mercy promised to our ancestor Abraham, that you have not forgotten. You have not forgotten the world, and you have not forgotten us. God, use us, fill us, send